Shishi Pancha Tattva ki jai, Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya ki jai, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai Nitai, Gaura Prema Mundi. Does anyone have a watch that I can use to keep the time? Oh, actually, I've got the time on the computer. Never mind. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So today we are reading from the Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, entitled The Status Quo, Chapter 29, Explanation of Devotional Service, Text 41. Please repeat. Yad vanaspatayo bhita
Yadvanaspatayo Vita
latas choshadibhi saha
Lataschaushadibi saha.
Sve sve kale bigrinanti.
Sve sve kale vibrinanti.
Pushpani cha palani cha.
Pushpani cha palani cha.
Yadvanaspata yobhita.
Yadvanaspatayo bhita.
Latash choshadibi saha.
Lataschaushadibi saha.
Sve sve kale bigrinanti.
Sve sve kale vibrinanti.
Pushpani cha palani cha.
Pushpani cha palani cha.
Yadvanaspata yobhita.
Yadvanaspatayo bhita.
Latash choshadibi saha.
Lataschaushadibi saha.
Sve sve kale bigrinanti.
Sve sve kale vibrinanti.
Pushpani cha palani cha.
Pushpani cha palani cha.
Maybe we'll just have one of you chant it and then we'll go straight into it for the sake of time.
Yadvanaspatayo bhita.
Yadvanaspatayo bhita.
Lataschaushadibi saha.
Latash choshadibi saha.
Sve sve kale vibrinanti.
Sve sve kale bigrinanti.
Pushpani cha palani cha.
Pushpani cha palani cha. Please repeat the synonyms yat.
Yeah.
Because of whom?
Because of whom?
Vanapataya,
Vanapataya.
the trees.
Trees.
Pita,
Bhita.
fearful.
Therefore.
Lata,
Lata.
creepers.
Creepers.
Cha,
Cha.
and Oshadibi,
Oshadibi.
herbs.
Herbs.
Saha,
Saha.
with.
With.
Sway, sway, kale.
Sve sve kale.
Each in its own season.
Each in its own season.
Abhigrinanti,
Abhigrinanti.
bear.
Vare.
Pushpani,
Pushpani.
flowers.
Flowers.
Cha,
Cha.
and
And
palani,
palani.
fruits.
Fruits.
Cha,
Cha.
also. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jaya. Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the trees, creepers, herbs, and seasonal plants and flowers blossom and fructify, each in its own season. Purport. As the sun rises and sets and the seasonal changes ensue at their appointed times by the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so the seasonal plants, flowers, herbs, and trees all grow under the direction of the Supreme Lord. It is not that plants grow automatically without any cause, as the atheistic philosophers say. Rather, they grow in pursuance of the supreme order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is confirmed in the Vedic literature that the Lord's diverse energies are working so nicely that it appears that everything is being done automatically. Om Gana Timarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Nilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadada Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Ukam karati vachalam pangam langayate grimya kripatamaham vande shi gurum dina taranam. Offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, the deliverer of all fallen souls, whose mercy turns the dumb into eloquent speakers and enables the lame to cross mountains. Translation again. Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the trees, creepers, herbs, and seasonal plants and flowers blossom and fructify, each in its own season. So, what's being explained here by Lord Kapila Dev is that, more or less, simply put, Sarva Karana Karanam, that Krishna is the cause of everything, even the growth of the trees, the creepers, the herbs, the flowers, the fruits. As Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, Vedaishchasara aham eva Vedya, by all the Vedic literatures, by all the knowledge, it is he who is to be understood. And he's the cause of everything. Aham savasya prabhava. He's the source of everything. All the material and spiritual worlds emanate from him. And the Puranas, particularly, and the Itihasas, then they explain in detail how that's done. So you can read how the Lord expands himself in various ways through Vishnu Tattva and Shakti Tattva to initiate the creation of the universe and, of course, its maintenance and upkeep, all the way down to us little human beings on planet Earth. Chato vanyam maya srishtam guna kama vibhagashaha. Krishna, he created the Varnashram Dharma system, Varnas and Ashramas, to regulate the activities of the human beings. So how does that relate to today? Well, you see, out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is being done. So what that means is that there's an ultimate authority who regulates activity, who regulates everything that we see in nature, everything that we see in this phenomenal universe. So that goes through for everything, like the Brahma Samhita, Lord Brahma explains that even the sun planet traverses a very specific course by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It does not deviate. It rotates, etc., throughout the universe. You could say out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is fear of God. Of course, the goal of Srimad Bhagavatam, the goal of devotional service, goes beyond just fear of the Supreme. But in one sense, you can say that everyone is executing their prescribed duties because out of fear of the authority of the Supreme. So a wise person, he understands that I have a particular function to perform, and that is directed by the Vedic literatures given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if I don't do that, then there will be chaos. In other words, there'll be destruction, there'll be suffering to endure. So what to speak of the herbs and the trees, we're hearing about more or less material nature here, how everything is happening because of the Supreme Lord. And of course, we also understand there are personalities behind the material phenomena that we see in the universe. We understand from the Vedic literature that that is also being caused by conscious entities who are doing that under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, in human society, then those that are wise, those that are in knowledge, they also act, so to speak, out of fear of the Supreme, meaning that they know that I have a specific duty to perform, and if I don't do that, then I should be fearful. There will be reactions for that. So that's very different to what we hear today, as Prabhupada says in the purport. It is not that plants grow automatically without any cause, as the atheistic philosophers say. So some people would have us believe that everything has happened just by chance. Everything, absolutely everything, has just happened by chance. That's the miracle of life. And because of that, actually, then there is no ultimate authority, and therefore, ultimately, there's nothing to fear. Fear is just, they'll probably equate it to some sort of, anthropological or something like that phenomena. For survival instincts, we became fearful of predators and all these kind of things just to survive, etc., etc. But actually, it's just a construct of your imagination. Similarly, the whole idea of good and bad, it's just a mental concoction, some sort of sentiment to regulate human beings. They'll even equate religion as being created to control the masses. But ultimately, actually, we've got nothing to fear. So you could say the enlightened atheist is not fearful. And similarly, the Paramahansa, the devotee, actually isn't fearful. But the beginning we hear is Aishwarya again. First, we must understand the opulence, the majesty of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the first thing that we have to learn. This is part of Sambandha again. God is great and we are small. God is all powerful. Ananta Shakti Drik, he's full of all Shakti, all potency, all power. And I am very small and insignificant, but a mere part and parcel of that Supreme. And therefore, I should do what he says. I should follow his instructions. Dhammam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. Yamaraj, he's talking to the Yamadutas, his order carriers, his messengers. And he says this very famous verse, Dhammam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam, that only Dharma can be enunciated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That means that only the Supreme Personality of Godhead can designate what your duty is, what you're meant to do. And when we violate that, go against that, our Dharma, then we cause our own suffering. And we cause chaos in society. So there has to be a reaction for that. If you do not if you don't do what you're meant to do, there's a reaction for that because you're also impacting the well-being of others. So that's what we see today. Human beings do not regulate their activities according to the Vedic knowledge. And therefore, everything is topsy-turvy. Everything is chaotic on every level. Physically, psychologically, what to speak of spiritually, ecologically, socially, politically. Everything is in chaos because human beings are acting against the Shastra. They're not acting out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So what does Krishna say will happen? Yashastra vidim utsrijya vartate kama karataha nasat siddhim abapnoti not sukham not parangatim. So he says, he who disregards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. And of course, earlier in that chapter, he explains the lifestyle and philosophy of the atheistic philosophers and those that follow the atheistic philosophers, and he explains their lifestyle and their philosophy, and then he also explains the outcome of that. Following such conclusions, they're lost to themselves and they perform unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world. So fear of the Supreme is a good place to start, actually. Some religious traditions talk about the fear of God, because if you don't follow God's instructions, the Supreme Lord's instructions, if you don't understand there's an authority and we have to adhere to that authority, then we will suffer. So that's that's a kind of enlightenment that's very intelligent, just like citizens within any society have to understand what are the rules, the regulations, the state laws, the legislations of the government, and follow them. Otherwise, ignorance is no excuse. You will be punished. So law-abiding citizens, you could say, in one sense, out of fear for the governmental authorities, then they're doing their civic duties. They're following the laws of the land. It's a kind of fear, because imagine if there was no ultimate regulating authority, then more than what we see already with criminal activity because of weak leadership, then society would be so chaotic. Because why? Because when things aren't regulated under the direction of the Supreme Lord, then things become very chaotic. Basically, people start to act very selfishly on the whims of their body and mind. So that's what they mean by like barbarian. So that's a kind of enlightenment, and we give all credit to those that fear the Supreme Personality of Godhead and therefore act in a pious way. Piety means to adhere to the instructions of the Supreme Lord. Simply put, that's what piety means. That's dharma. When you follow the instructions, dhammam tu sakashat bhagavat pranitam, of the Supreme Lord, that's what it means by piety. So all the greatest authorities within the universe, they actually acquire those positions because of punya, because of piety, which means it's nothing to be undermined, which means they've shown and they've proven that they can adhere to the rules and regulations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through thick and thin. And for that, then they've shown that they're actually qualified to be leaders. Through thick and thin, they've adhered to Dharma, so they've amassed the resultant reactions of that, punya, and therefore they're placed in administrative roles throughout the universe. Like we hear from Shiva, talking to the Prachetas, that if one follows their varnik and ashram duties perfectly for 100 lifetimes, you can become so qualified that you can actually take the position of Lord Brahma, the top engineer within the universe, and one of the foremost authorities in Vedic knowledge. So you can also scale that down to earthly existence as well. And we should understand that though definitely the leaders of today are wayward and demoniac, for want of a better word, but somehow they've warranted those positions, whether they're agents of our karma or they actually have some background of qualification. Of course, it's not, we understand also it's kind of like a curse to be a leader in Kali Yuga. Why is that? Because we hear that the leaders take 1/6 of the karma of the people that they're leading. So most likely unknown to the leadership of countries today, they're actually accumulating a lot of bad reactions. But not to stray far from where I was trying to go with this. Yes, to be a leader, you have to be very pious, generally speaking, because you've shown through thick and thin that you can adhere to the instructions of the Supreme Lord. So that's a kind of enlightenment, but higher than that is actually not just fear of the Supreme, but love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is a very confidential teaching of the Vedic literature, the Bhakti Bhava, which transcends actually this. Once you come to this stage of not fearing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but actually loving the Supreme Lord, then you actually can transcend the Vedas, as Krishna says, Trigunya Vishaya, Veda Nistrigunya Bhavajuna. And that's actually what he tells Arjuna to do. So, of course, the Bhagavad Gita is full of many levels of instructions. And one of them is, Arjuna, do your Varnic duty. You're a leader. Yad yad acharati shreshtas. Even if I, Krishna says, even if I don't do it, actually I could be blamed for not doing it because I'm a leader. But ultimately, Krishna is instructing Arjuna to actually transcend all those considerations on the basis of bhakti. And the perfection of bhakti is prema, love of God. As Rupa Goswami explains, the whole process of bhakti, ador, shraddha, tata, sadhu, sangota, bhajana kriya, so on and so forth. He calls it a krama. This is a chronological order, a process by which you come to prema, love of God. And then on that platform, actually, you no longer even have to strictly adhere to the instructions of the Vedic literatures, which are meant for people within the modes of material nature, because that's all karmic considerations, good and bad, piety and papa. But still, you see that all the great devotees of the Lord, like Krishna even mentions Maharaj Janaka, even though he's a great devotee, still he performed all of his duties perfectly. So even though pure love of Godhead, love for the Supreme Lord is far beyond fear of the Supreme Lord, still the result is the same. The result is the same, because actually, as Krishna explains, the soul actually in perfection is a dharma atma, kshipram bhavati dharmatma. Is a righteous soul, which means by nature, actually, one follows those societal rules and regulations naturally. Some devotees, they do show the transcendental nature of bhakti in a different way by acting completely outside of any Vedic regulations. That's called an avaduta. That's not. That is totally this trigunya, totally beyond the modes of material nature. But generally speaking, devotees by nature, they act in a very pious way. You can see that very vividly in the Puranas and the Itihasas. The demonstration of the philosophy and action, personalities like the Pandavas, Yudhishthir Maharaj, so dharmic, but at the same time, he is a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Indeed, he's the cousin brother of Krishna in Krishna's Leela as Dwarkanata. You can see he's Dharmaraja. Even though actually, strictly speaking, he's beyond all those considerations. He even explains my purpose ultimately for performing the Rajasuya Yagya, which is a Karma Kanda Yagya, meaning that people would perform these yagyas to generate punya, to attain these higher positions in future lives, whether it means becoming a Lokapala, a leader on the cosmic scale, or at least attaining residence with the Lokapalas. Still, it's a karma kanda, yes, but Yudhishthira actually says, ultimately, the reason why I want to perform this yagya is to establish Krishna as the greatest personality within the universe. So the goal of the Vedas is Krishna, and the highest realization of our connection with Krishna is the Bhakti Bhava, which goes beyond certainly this fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the point being the same, that actually the result is the same. It's kind of like you could maybe draw a similarity, a comparison between sadhana and raga, you know. So like sadhana bhakti, the stage that most of us are most likely at, is we understand that we have to adhere to the Shastra. We're acting, it's also called Vaidhi Bhakti. We're acting because of the Vidhi, the instructions of the Shastra. The reason why we get up in the morning and go to Mangalarti is because the Guru told us to do that. The Shastra told us we should do that. So, okay, that's the right thing to do. I'll do that. That's my duty, you could say, as a sadhaka. So that you could say that's a kind of fear. You know, we're doing it because we have to, not necessarily because we want to, but because we have to. Because if we don't, then we won't please the Guru, we won't please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we won't go back to Godhead, etc. But as we make advancement, then we hear that actually changes. It should change. And the consideration should be actually raga, attachment. And raga, as it intensifies and goes further, then it becomes eventually a sakti, and then bhava, then prema. So raga means that we go to Mangalarti, for instance, because we want to, not just because the spiritual master said we should, or because the Vedic literature says that it's the right thing to do if you want to be a devotee of Vishnu. You do it because actually you want to go to Mangalarti. You like it. There's attachment, there's raga, you know, there's taste, there's ruchi, all these kind of things. So that's actually the perfection of all Vedic knowledge. That's the perfection of all Vedic knowledge. And we're following the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we're serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not because we fear him, but because we love him. So out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the trees, creepers, herbs, and seasonal plants and flowers blossom and fructify each in its own season. Are there any comments or questions?
Seems like there's a lot of people, even though they may not be on the Raga platform, they may still want to go to Mangalarti or like going to Mangalarti. So what is that? Is that some shadow, or is it just nice?
I'd say it's the beginning.
Yeah.
Because from memory, for those that didn't hear, that may be tuning in, Nadi Kaishora Prabhu has asked that it seems that people that may not be on the Raga platform, they still may like to go to Mangalarti, as an example. So from memory, Prabhupada explains in Nectar of Devotion, I think it is like that he explains Raganuga Bhakti as like they rise early in the morning and they go to Mangalarti because they want to. So it's not just kind of like suddenly, what we got to understand about the process of Krishna consciousness, it's like Krishna said, Shanai, Shanai, it's gradual, step by step. So it's not like one day we're like doing things just because of Vaidhi, and then the next day suddenly we're on the Raga platform. There's going to be that, you know, that crossover period, you know, where we're transitioning that way. So that's a good sign. That's a healthy sign that we're going in the right direction. When we don't want to sleep in, we don't want to basically be a godasa. And we actually, and not only that, it's not that we don't want to do that, it's just actually more so than that, is that we're just excited about Krishna consciousness. And so that's going to happen, you know, and if you're liking Mangalarti, if you're liking chanting the holy name, Japa, Kirtan, if you like hearing about Krishna, reading the books, you like Srimad Bhagavatam class, because you like hearing, or you love hearing the glories of the Supreme Lord, then this is a sign that you're regaining your spiritual health and well-being. So it's not, yeah, there'll be a time when it's anishtita, you know, like Like there's, in the process of Krishna consciousness, there's the stage called bhajana, kriya. So that's the stage that we all come to when we start executing devotional service under the instructions of the spiritual master. And there's the anishtita and the nishtita stage. So anishtita is the unsteady stage. You know, we're up, down, a little bit this way, that way. But we're on the path. We're swaying side to side, but we're going forward. But then eventually, as that matures, it becomes nishtita. And we become very fixed. It's like a very advanced kanishta adhikari, a very advanced sadhaka. And as that continues very nicely, then of course, then that will destroy the anartas to a large degree within the heart, and then we become to the nishta stage, fixed. So there's going to be that stage where sometimes we're hot, sometimes we're cold. Does that make any sense? So we'll stop there, and thank you all for tuning in to Srimad Bhagavatam class. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai nitai. Gaura Premanandi. You have to stop this thing. Don't know how to do it. Hare Krishna.